go live? Okay, let's do it then. Let's go live. 5, 4. I know. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Sorry, good afternoon. I do apologise. This Scrutiny Committee meeting is being conducted on a hybrid basis in accordance with the Local Government Elections Wales Act 2021, which will operate alongside the Council's standing orders. Council's standing orders of code of conduct will apply at all times, and members should conduct themselves accordingly. A recorded version of this meeting will be uploaded for public viewing as soon as possible after the meeting. While translation of the proceedings can be provided upon request, the images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the council. Okay, just a note in terms of cameras. We've got some councillors have got some technology issues, so they won't be able to turn their camera on if they're asking a question. I think the upgrades to Windows 11 are a bit sort of hit and miss with a few people. So please just bear with those councillors who haven't managed to resolve that with IT yet. Any apologies for absence?
Apologies, Chair, and Councillor Linton, Councillor Pym, and Councillor Simpson.
Fantastic. Any declarations of interest from any councillors at this stage? Okay, item 3 on the agenda then is the corporate communications performance report, and there's a verbal and visual presentation from officers first. So over to you guys.
Thanks very much, Chair. So I'm here at Head of Service, Lisa McKeon. Lisa's our director. Send his apologies today. We've got Kate Osmond, who's the team manager, the lead for strategic comms, and Janice, who's the service manager, Janice Dent. We've also got cabinet member Emma Corton as the cabinet member. So there was a brief note within the agenda, just so everyone has the opportunity to read about that in terms of background. But what we intend to do is go through a presentation and go through that in a bit more detail, if that's okay.
Yep.
And talk about the changes within the team, the performance, so on of late. Why we're here today is this being performance scrutiny. So this came up through our own service plan, where we report on strategic comms, but also through some of the service plans where the heads of service leads mentioned the importance of communications, and obviously the website comes up really frequently in a lot of conversations, so we'll obviously cover off on that as well. So that would be my intro. Janice is going to drive. Slide, Jan.
Speak a little bit of a delay, so I'll start just with an introduction to what we call the full service approach. And this is one of the things that we've tried, one of the biggest changes over the last couple of years. Previously, although we've been embedded kind of as a comms team for many, many years within the authority, some of the ways we did things were a bit informal. There was some ad hoc nature to it. So over the last couple of years, we've taken what we call the full service approach, which is a very similar approach that PR agencies, marketing agencies, etc. would take. So that slide there shows the different skills and the different services that we offer within the team. But the main focus is encouraging service areas to engage with the team through one central kind of route, which we've done through an online request information, request support side of things. But actually that we encourage them, rather than coming to us and saying, we want something specific, that they come to us saying, this is what we're doing. These are our target audiences. This is what we want to achieve. This is what we want success to look like at the end. So as a team, then we consider that from every skill set that we've got, all those, around those kind of green boxes, that we can build a plan with the team, with the service area, using all of the platforms available to us, all of the skill sets, all of the ways that we can communicate with different audiences, rather than, it's a very crude example, but many years ago, people would come to us and say, we'd like to do a poster to advertise X. Actually, we can do so much more. Let's look at it as a bigger package. So that's really what we've been focusing on for the last couple of years. And we've done a lot to go out to service areas to talk about that side of things, gone through kind of managers networks, DMT meetings and things like that to encourage people to engage with us that way. So that's the biggest change really over the last few years for us to improve our service areas with comms marketing.
So we talked about the comms team a lot, so it would be useful just to kind of see who that is. So the big symbols there are actual full-time equivalents. So the amount of people that we've got. So obviously, you know, Kate as the communications manager sits within my service area. And then we've got 2 people, communications, website, etc. These are the permanent staff. And then on top of these, then as part of the website development, we've had fixed term contracts for a content creator. You may have seen all of their input on social media more recently, and also for 2 grade 5 web assistants to be able to support the content to the website. So I think often when you talk about teams, you imagine them to be kind of lots of people, but just to give you the impact of where we are. The key things that the team...
Is that the largest you can make it? I can just about read it from here, but there seems to be lots of black space around there. So is it possible to make the presentation bigger?
on that screen.
If you join the meeting on your laptop, you'll be able to see that directly if you wish to as well.
I can see it all right, but if it gets a bit more dense, I'm just thinking might have a...
That's probably the slide with
That's
the most
yeah.
information on it. So we will share this as well.
Yeah, those are the team and the different bits that they all work on. It looks like it's very kind of linear, but obviously it isn't. Everybody shares their own responsibilities, and there's lots going on in the team around upskilling and kind of keeping that service. So key facts, as you can see, the difference here between 23-24, sorry, and 24-25 as to kind of how many media inquiries, the proactive press releases, and the proactive social media posts. So we all know that even though the traditional forms of communications are still really important, it's the social media that gets the most kind of views and the most traction currently. So you can see where that has increased alongside our design jobs. So Kate was saying earlier about, you know, the poster, and there's much more of an expectation now, and the team is much kind of better skilled to be able to do a wider comms and PR marketing approach rather than just kind of, you know, your bog standard poster. So there's lots of design jobs that have been coming through as well. Just to break it down, so into where we get the requests from, and the types of requests. So we got, as you can see, mostly design and comms. So it's the whole package that Kate just talked about, and there's quite a few that we do that are design only. And the other graph, the other table then shows you kind of where those requests are coming from by service area. So again, sometimes we have this kind of conversation with service areas about how can we support you, and there's some service areas you can see there that are really engaged and kind of work with us, and then other kind of services that we need to work a bit harder with to be able to kind of spread that the support that we can offer there.
I think as well it's worth noting that some of those are very obviously customer facing service areas, so you would expect environmental public protection team to engage with us more because it's bins, because it's recycling, because it's lighting, etc. So there are some service areas, drawing standards for an example, that generally wouldn't naturally do as much on comms. So you've kind of got to take that into consideration if you look at the breakdown as well.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that probably we should have said at the beginning really, is this is about the external comms team. So, you know, the internal comms, the staff comms is separate from this. So this is when we're looking at kind of public facing comms. So the other things that the teams do is we support every CM briefing. And the reason for that is to make sure that we're kind of aware of any issues before they become an issue. So we can make sure that we're following up with some proactive or kind of messaging that is better facing for the public. We do support cabinet and council reports, and again picking through and seeing how the things that we think our residents will be more interested in and how we can communicate those better. We've been heavily involved in the new leisure centre and the property services review. And I know Kate's doing a lot of work with the new company on how they can support setting up their presence. We get involved in corporate matters, so we're kind of looking at the budgets and how we best communicate that to our residents and to other stakeholders, and also our carbon reduction targets and the different schemes that we've got in place to be able to support that work. We work a lot with partnerships, so even though it's external fund, they say it is still our partnerships, so the CREMS, the fostering. You will have seen the new coroner site and the new CREMS site is the website, and you know, kind of how we work that. So it's not an MCC, but it's a partnership across the region, and we still support that. And event support as well, so major and our civic events, and they seem to happen a lot. So we've got the food festival in a couple of weeks now, so that you will see the team wandering around taking photos, sharing social media, etc. throughout the weekend.
I think it's worth adding, so that first slide that I talked about is what we offer as a team and how people can engage with us. That slide is about how we as a team, even though it's a small team, we embed ourselves, so we go towards briefings, we're part of those project teams. So it's about kind of how stuff comes into the team and how we it's out there and try to remind people that need to do it. So to talk a little bit about the crossovers and the responsibilities. Communications obviously is a profession, there's a skill set, but communication, if you like, with a small c, is everybody's responsibility. So across the service areas, is everybody has a responsibility as well. So we work very closely with the service areas to identify opportunities and risks, and to encourage them to use those established routes into the comms team. But really, it's about that joined up approach and that partnership working across the authority. We ask people to come to us as the earliest opportunity. The sooner we know about things, the better work we can do, rather than trying to turn things around really quickly. And we don't want to do things to tick a box. We want to do it in the best way possible. So making sure that, you know, and we do that through the calendar briefings, going to the service area, project teams and things, is to keep reminding, let us know when you're at a key point in these projects, so we can support with the comms side of things. And again, tying back into the full service approach, that we make sure that we can activate all of those different areas around the table available to us, but always reminding people across the service, across the authority, come to us early. That's how we do our best work. Some of the other crossovers, and I know there's been a lot of questions about some of this in the different forums. Communications and customer services. There are some very clear platform divides with what's websites and what is my council services. But we are again embedded in the customer services review project to make sure that the work that we're doing from a web point of view ties in with what customer services are doing, and really developing a good relationship there of them feeding back to us some of the problems that people are experiencing, us feeding back into how we can better integrate those platforms, etc. So that's developed certainly over the last 6 months or so. That's seen some really good improvements. And likewise engagement, although engagement is a different skill to communications, quite often they're bundled together, but they are different areas. But we're supporting engagement through awareness of the engagement that we're carrying out, but the platforms we've got available to us that we're maximising them, whether it's web, plus Wi-Fi, citizens panel, social media, all of those different things to reach different audiences. One of the things we will say, and we're trying to really push this, is getting better at communicating the outcomes. So we ask people their opinions. We do take them on board as an authority, but we're not always very good at telling people at the end, this is what we've done, thank you for that, and here are the changes. So that's the thing that we're trying to push support service areas to complete that circle, if you like.
One of the reasons that comms is now within kind of the service area that I look after is to get that link. So I already manage the public engagement team, So being able to kind of close that loop and kind of make sure that we're all aware of each other's priorities really and commitments.
And just to finish off on that slide, sorry, John. To the public, it doesn't matter which service area delivers what service, does it? So actually, we might be delivering some work, engagement will be doing some work, customer services, but to general public, that's all the same thing, isn't it? So trying to make sure that we really keep those things tied together because it affects our reputation. So measuring and reporting, as Tracy mentioned in her introduction, obviously our key kind of targets, our key KPIs, that's a tongue twister, they are what we're aiming for within this year, all ties up within the PPT service plan. We report against that, obviously, and back to scrutiny in different forums. In particular, within that, we've got the development of the digital communications channels that we've talked about. That's a big thing, reflecting the digital priorities of the council and the digital plan. Key partnership projects, so supporting those positive and proactive messages and communications about the city. So some examples of that, we're working closely with the Safer Newport partnership. We've got an events group set up that is not only the council and the council's events team with us, but it's also Kingsway, Friars Walk, the market, Newport Live, etc., all coming together once a month to talk about things that are going across the city, Newport Now, etc., so that we're all tied in and trying to coordinate those kind of things. And going back to the service plan, although there are very specific areas of focus for us within that, comms is actually a thread through most of it, because whatever we're doing as an authority, there is usually a comms action associated with it. More broadly, in the digital strategy targets, it's reflective of those joint workings that we've just been talking about between comms, customer services, digital, and the service area. So that's reflected in those overarching areas that we report on. And we have got some KPIs, which I'll talk about some of them and how that might change in the future a bit later on. But social media followers, our proactive output that we measure, and the digital strategy side of things, all of the gets we're currently kind of green against those KPIs. I think key thing for us is we report obviously to our cabinet member every month. And within that, we do feedback on our output, proactive outputs, the number of inquiries coming in, the nature of the things going on. We look at our social media performance on a monthly basis because it's so fast changing that you couldn't do that any less frequent than monthly. We look at those trends, how we can tweak what we're doing against those trends, looking at the analytics on all of those platforms, a bit of horizon scanning, things that we know are coming up, and obviously the forward planning when it comes to key events and big projects, etc. So that's been really, really positive for us to do that every month because it's so fast paced. Anything less is not as effective. So that's really positive.
Can I add to that as well? Sorry, Kate. We also have a weekly half-an-hour catch-up, don't we? Just to look at what's immediately on our agenda that week. What's, doing a bit of immediate horizon scanning as well. Just important to mention that as well, because that's another meeting for you guys.
Thanks, Emma. And a quick note to say the mid-years are coming here on the 24th of November, so we'll be bringing the 6 monthly.
So I suppose to recap on some of those things, one of the key areas of focus for us has been our approach to proactive and reactive comms, encouraging that service area engagement and understanding what we need from them to support them with comms and marketing, when to get us involved, come to us early, and how to spot both opportunities and risks. That it's not, there's lots of things that we could be telling about or be prepared to tell about that maybe aren't getting picked up kind of like at the early part of the process. And on the all of that is fed by the changing nature of the media and comms. You know, our interactions with local journalists are very, very different now because they're under pressure to churn out their content, to get it online. Deadlines barely exist now because it's that constant churn. It's not the 5 o'clock for tomorrow's paper anymore. And likewise, kind of the changing nature of social media. Platforms are changing all the time, algorithms are changing all the time. To really kind of keep that going. Digital communications, Tracy mentioned, obviously the website redevelopment, we'll talk about that in a bit of detail in a sec, but pushing things like our e-news channels, social media, and our approach to content creation, which again, we'll talk about. And aligning with corporate priorities, so making sure that it is tied in with priorities of the organisation, the customer contact review being a key example of that, the digital strategy being it, things like the cultural strategy and the thinking strategy are embedded in those discussions to make sure that it all ties in. And from our workload point of view, knowing what the priorities are for the organisation so we can best allocate our resources. Things like sit on the climate change programme boards and key partnerships that we talked about earlier. And strengthening the corporate approach to comms and marketing. So like I said, the integration of those different teams and those different platforms, full service approach. And always trying to strengthen the corporate branding standards, making sure we're meeting Welsh language standards, accessibility standards. We are reviewing and redeveloping some of our key policies and procedures around that to strengthen it. So that's kind of our key focuses. I'm just going to try not to share my journeys with everybody. So just some examples there for a little bit more detail around it. The redevelopment of the corporate website, so that's been a massive project for us, haven't been done for well over a decade. It's been a huge amount of work, but we're really pleased with where we've got to. We've moved to a purpose-designed platform. When I say purpose-designed, it's for public sector, developed by public sector, for public sector. So out of the box, we've improved our accessibility standards, user experience, etc. Digitalize the content, so we had kind of over 4,000 pages of content on the old site, which was nigh impossible to keep up to date. It's focused on user experience-led design, so we engage with specialists in designing the website. And a really important thing is we've got now a group of real people that come and help us test when we're introducing new content, and they are our residents. They've signed up, they volunteered to do it. They sit now on a panel for us and we go to them with things like when we introduce the new pest control, we send some examples out, we get the real-time feedback, which we never had before, so that's really good. Said accessibility best practice, we're hitting 100% scores on accessibility on what's called the Lighthouse score, so that's brilliant for us. We didn't have that before. More control and flexibility within the team because it's a less technically driven platform, so again gives us a chance to adapt more frequently, and it's made us much more future ready. The way that it works, it's an open source platform. At the moment, there's about 60 to 70 other councils on this platform, and we all share development. So rather than 60 councils all thinking, right, we need a new section of the website and all going off and doing their own thing, it goes into a pool and we can dip into it and bring it back. So really supported from a collaboration point of view, but also cost effective. We're not having to start anything from scratch. And part of that is the future ready stuff. So with introduction of AI modules, bots and things like that. So it's got us in a much stronger position. Jan mentioned some of the new microsites that we did, Gwen Creme and Gwen Coroner. So the Crem was a replacement for a very, very, very dated site, and the coroner never had one before. So that's been really good and had some really good feedback from that. Like I said, alignment with customer contact review, and on every page of the website now, there's a feedback form. So we ask people if there's any issues, come back to us straight away so we can address it in real time. Previously, it's a little bit finger in the air. Is it working? We didn't really know, apart from anecdotal evidence. So that's been really good, because if there's ever a problem with it, come straight into the team can look it up straight away and look at what we need to do to resolve that. Just a little stat there. Aside from the redevelopment project, just the website generally, we get over 100 content updates requests every month. So that's just core council information, making sure it's updated, correct, prices, times, information, etc. Future plans when it comes to the web, we are looking at putting in an annual web development plan. So we'll map out possibly in the next 2 years when it comes to kind of upgrades and what we want to introduce, which hasn't existed in that level of detail before. So that's what we're aiming for, looking at our resources and how we're best allocating them. Excuse me. And even more work then with MCS, the democracy pages, the jobs and iTrend side of things. So making sure those we get to another level of integration with those services, and the development of AI features and things in line with the digital priorities. That I think. And the other one we wanted to just briefly focus on was the social media and content creation. So as Janet mentioned, we've had an extra temporary member of staff to help us kind of look at this and change the way we're putting content out on social media, all about focusing on how we use it to improve engagement, not just checking out messages for the sake of right. We analyse the trends and performance all the time, like I was saying, that monthly update, so we're constantly tweaking how we do things. We've upskilled the wider team, so even though we've got a lead on this, who is very, very skilled and knowledgeable, the whole of the wider team's been trained. We have workshops, we look at best practice so that all of us can contribute to those improvements. Big thing has been partnerships that has really kind of boosted our reach and our interactions. Really good examples of that being the Music Trail and Food Festival. This year is an example when we worked with the events team, when they went out to the traders. We also put out some good practice guides when it came to social media, how they could link with us on social media, increase the reach, etc. I have got some hot off the press stats on the Food Festival side of things. So for the month checking on, it's this time last year, views are up 282%. Interactions are up 122%, and new followers are up 132%. So that's just how we've tweaked things this year compared to last year's. So that's just a really good example of how we're changing things. And likewise, you know, the development of how we do things, the strategy around it, so accessibility, making sure we're kind of really leading on that, meeting our large standards, and using AI and social media to our advantage, because the platforms like you to use the tools within them, they boost your reach, etc. So appreciating things like that. Future plans, so more of the monitoring, the analysing, the adapting, because you cannot stand still with this, because that essentially means going backwards. Focus on reaching younger audiences. We introduced some more platforms, campaign-led platforms, usually around the Music Trail. We started up a TikTok account, so we're kind of going into different platforms that obviously will reach younger audiences. We're currently working with social services and P&I, potentially on an app for younger people, and how we do that will tie in with the web and social media, making things more accessible, and working with influencers. We've been doing that now for, again, Music Trail and Food Festival specifically, but hopefully to broaden that out over wider projects. That's been really positive. And I think this one was reported back at a previous scrutiny committee, wasn't it? It was just that example. The reason we did the first 4 months of 2025 was because that was since we'd had this new resource in place. So it's a direct comparison. So you can see the increase in figures there year on year. And like we've just said, you know, kind of looking at campaign specifics, we're seeing really good increases year on year as well.
Should I just come in there, because this came up through the digital strategy, and the challenge at that committee, rightly, well, you must have started very low if you've got 5,000% increase. And yes, we did. That's right. We didn't start low, but it's still good that we're no longer in that position. So there's sort of a bit of a debate about that.
And I think there is expectation management there, because we can't keep going up by 5,000%, obviously. But just, you know, again, but, you know, we are seeing, so on our main council pages, on our Meta platforms for Facebook and Instagram, we had 1.7 million views last month, which is great. That's up between 12 and 13%. So we're still seeing increases. Interactions were up to over 20%. So on this month last year. So we are still seeing that steady. We had a big jump when we introduced it, but we're still seeing a steady increase, which is really positive, and what we aim to maintain then, that kind of steady and sensible increase, if you like. Then some of the other functions within the team, then just to touch on them, so the campaign and marketing side of things. So, you know, one of our officers leads in this area with the support of the whole team, but kind of, you know, the digital marketing, the outdoor advertising, the production of materials, collateral, signage, etc. So I just popped a few on there as an example. Later in the presentation, there's also a link to our online portfolio design. Thank you. So I would encourage you to have a look at that, because we put some of the, you know, lots of our jobs on there, and, you know, I think most people would look at it and agree it looks like, you know, kind of a design agency. So I would encourage you to have a look at that and see what they can all do. So just briefly, some of the major campaigns we worked on last financial year: Food Festival, Music Trail, Festive Newport. That's a new one for us. Working Skills, that's an ongoing thing. We have a D-Day 18 celebration, Heroes Week, community learning, adult learning, all the eco events and activities that were going on, and lots around active travel last year, just as a snapshot of some of them. And coming up, again, Food Festival, obviously, which you'll see is right in the throes of academic movement. Next year's Music Trail, again, we're doing Festive Newport, again, a big partnership project there. We've been working with the team with the new pest control service, again, the carbon reduction side of things. Culture strategy and the placemaking strategy will be a big one. We're working closely with Regen and Economic Development on in the next few months. And those major regional projects that are coming to fruition, like the leisure centre, etc. So very briefly, we talked about the design service in-house. We do a full design service, so everything from traditional graphic design to filming, photography, animation, and we'll help with the print side of things if needed. Obviously, we've got a print team in-house, and we work closely with Monwell for the outdoor side of things. It does offer very good value for money. Just to give an example, for a small design agency externally, if we were to commission them, we're talking about £97 an hour. Got our whole team for that kind of thing. So it does offer very good value for money in that side of things. We saw on that early slide of the stats the increase in demand. It's this last financial year, so 24-25, we saw a 20% increase in design jobs. Lots of demand around that, because it is everything from your posters to your flags at the food festival to reports to the forms that we see, to our media graphics, our social media graphics, everything like that. So it's every form of design that you could think of. And like I said, also filming, which is in the grand scheme of things fairly recent in-house, but again offers great value for money, and you can just go out and do stuff really quickly. But yeah, if you get a chance, have a look at the portfolio. There's some really good examples on there.
Yeah, I'm going to share the ones with you.
Research and analytics, we've talked a bit about KPIs and how we report back through, but this is an area that we're trying to put more focus on generally and on an ongoing basis. So we can better understand the impact of what we're putting out there, and that we can tailor our comms around it, so that we're more data driven. We know what's worked, we know what offers us, kind of return of our investment, etc. So you've got the more obvious bits, the analytic tools that we've got on social media, what we've got on the website. We also look at national statistics, so things like Ofcom's Media Nations report, we look at how that might impact us locally. We're also part of some very useful public sector networks where they look at platform use specifically in the sector, so we can look at where we need to be and how we need to communicate. So that's really positive. But a key one for us is working with the service areas to ensure they're recording, where did you hear about this? So to use pest control as an example, actually, when they get bookings in, asking those questions, how did you find out about this? Where did you read about it? So we can see what's hitting, what's landing, what's kind of sinking with people. So really trying to push that in service areas. Some are brilliant at it. So it's not easy to do, it's not easy to collect that information, but it really helps us in making decisions on how we do things differently. Yeah, sorry. And again, just kind of two that we've worked on recently, just as obviously there are lots more examples than this, but the Newport Music Trail was a massive one for us, that we use every platform you can imagine, kind of, organic, some paid for, national, outdoor advertising, posters, postcards, etc. Kind of, we use the Newport Now app to push it out as well. So again, working with our partners, digital radio adverts, they're getting some really good traction for us from the digital radio side of things. So for the music trail, when we geo-targeted the adverts, 60% of people heard them through a smart speaker. That just goes to show how things are changing. 34% heard the advert through a mobile phone or a tablet. So again, kind of how things are changing digitally. And the advert was listened to in full over 234,000 times, which was a 90% listen through rate. That's how they record it. So some really good traction with some different types of marketing channels there for us. And the pest control side, a little, we worked with them, and this is ongoing, obviously, because it's a new service. But in the first 4 weeks, we did social media, Facebook and Instagram advertising, which is very, very cost effective. We reached almost 25,000 people in that first 4 weeks, nearly 60,000 impressions, and over 1,000 link clicks, which converted into 54 bookings in a very short period. So we're still working with them, and that's an example of getting the feedback. Where are people seeing it? Where are they not seeing it? Where do we not need to spend time doing it? So evolving all the time. I'll touch on this briefly because it is that kind of about the mix of the old and new as well, because there is still a case for both, we feel, at the moment. Now, these are the results of the Understanding Our Audience survey that we did in 2023, towards the end of 2023. We have just repeated it. We're doing the analytics of it at the moment, so those will be coming out shortly for comparison. But seeing those initial results in, they're not too dissimilar. There are some kind of shifts, but they're not too dissimilar. So it just shows that actually things you would expect website to be high on it, but it shows that Newport matters. We're still getting really positive feedback on that. And this was through citizens panel, new matters obviously, social media, digital, best Wi-Fi. So lots of different channels, not just it wasn't people in Newport Matters saying that they love Newport Matters kind of thing. But yeah, really interesting that breakdown that it still shows potentially, you know, the need for more of the traditional. Still, there's a demand for it. But yeah, we'll be sharing the results of this year's very soon, so that's been interesting too. So upcoming work and some of the key projects, I think we touched on those key campaigns that are coming back through the festival. Music trade, etc., Festival Newport, pest control, things like that. Like I said, big ones for us will be over the next few months, the culture strategy and placemaking side of things, and also major region projects. Ongoing web development, like I said, we're coming to the end of the transition between the old and the new, but putting that business as usual and making sure we have continuous improvement on there. And the digital comms side of things, and looking at skills resilience, we talked about the structure that Jan spoke about. We have the leads for every specialism, if you like, but for resilience and capacity wise, every strand of the team delivers across the board. So you have your lead, you have your expert in it, but we all can kind of think of all of those different areas and support that full service approach. So we'll keep doing work on that. And likewise, the analysis side of things, that's really important for us, that we haven't got oodles and oodles of resources, so how do we best allocate them and use that data to make those decisions? And trying to take a fresh approach to things as well, actually, certainly with the social media side of things, sometimes being a little less formal, kind of getting lots of more user-generated content is working wonders. So, you know, trying to do more of that, doing more with the young people, etc. Prioritisation point of view, like I said, very much trying to be more data-driven with it, but also making sure that we align with corporate priorities, that we're there to support that, and that we have the ability then to report to service area needs depending on what they're doing, and getting that balance between the proactive and reactive comms, because we get a lot of inquiries, and on average 35 a month team, and you know, making sure we have that balance and control and react as quickly as we can. I think that's all my slides.
I think that's it from so much of Cabinet member with it. I just wanted to say a massive thank you to the support. Kate mentioned it as well, but we are really lucky to have a cabinet member that supported the proms and that continued engagement to make sure that we are doing things that kind of meets our organisational and even kind of the wider requirements as well.
Okay.
Should we stop sharing?
Yes. Emma, did you want to come in and add anything to that? You were just invited by Jan then, so.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, I sounded saying I was unmuted. I was on mute. Yeah, I mean, we've got a great team. As you can see, it's a small team, but the volume that they put out is just phenomenal, and they're just so dedicated to ensuring we present the council in the best possible light wherever we can, and that real move, which I'm sure Kate will attest, has been, you know, an interesting shift to being more proactive than reactive, has been really helpful actually in helping us get our message out. So all credit to the team, they're just brilliant, they work so hard, we're very lucky to have them.
Thanks, Emma.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, over to the committee for questions then. Councillor Montford.
Thank you. Great presentation. There is a lot of information out there being put out there, and in today's society, there's probably in a way too much information, and something we spoke about earlier, misinformation. One of the services I rely very heavily on is obviously the website. And I have some observations about the website. I think it's improved a lot, I think there's a way to go. I get frustrated using it, particularly the search is not great. I don't know if you have any comment on that. Am I misusing the search? Something I was looking at earlier was the local development plan, which is a big issue for many people in the ward. And it seems to be one area that is, to me, and this might be part of the problem, that I can't find what I'm looking for, and I'm not educated in how to do it. It seems like you are heavily reliant on other departments putting information up on the website. You don't put everything up yourself, for sure. But I think there is room for improvement for making the website more navigatable and consistent. And again, back with the RLDP, sometimes it jumps off to another website. Yeah, and it's difficult to really find what you're looking for straight away. I'm quite conversant with it. People who aren't probably give up.
Yeah, by all means, yeah.
Completely agree. So, but I completely agree. But there are things in progress.
Exactly, and that's what I'm saying.
So, and thank you for saying that we've seen an improvement. The difficulty or the challenge that we've had, we were moving a massive website onto a new platform. It has taken time. You will see from looking at it now, we still have some sections on what we call the old websites on an old platform, and that's all due to be migrated by the end of this year. And planning being one of those. We're due to move that over in the next couple of weeks, so you will see some differences there. And when we commissioned the new platform, one of the things that we put into the brief right from the start was the best possible search engine, because we know we all do it as users. We very rarely kind of try and trail through things, you bug it in the search engine. So we have commissioned and paid for as part of this project that best possible search engine. The challenge with it is where we've had the new platform and the old platform running concurrently, the search doesn't pull back from the old section as well as the new. So it has been a bit bumpy, but every time we've migrated old content onto the new site, we see an improvement. The search engine starts drawing more from it. So once we've moved everything over, you should see a massive improvement in that. So we're going as quick as we can, but you should hopefully see an improvement, definitely see an improvement in that once the content is moved over. We're also, as part of that ongoing development side of things, so we talked about new features that are coming out. One of the things we're looking at prioritising when we move into business as usual is some new search functions where they will be better at searching within documents. So if you use planning as an example, there are lots of supporting policies, plans and things like that. But actually, because of AI and those kind of things, they're getting better at searching within the document, not just within the HTML text that's on the website. So the more we do with the website now, the more those features will be improving. So I suppose the summary of that is we've bought into, and we're developing on, a platform that offers us real opportunities to keep improving those kind of things. It's a little bit of a bumpy road while we're in the middle of the project. So.
Yeah, and I appreciate that this is a fast moving area. And one of the other things that interests me now is AI. And I think it brings a huge number of advantages, but it also can be quite misleading. And I've fallen foul of getting reports from AI and then finding that what it's telling you is not actually found it somewhere, yes. But it doesn't mean that it's all good information. So it's good to see that we're going that way, but there are pitfalls. What about the cost of AI? I have no idea. Everything I use is free, but for commercial companies and for the council, is it a big cost using AI?
Excellent, thanks. So, and you're really right about false responses, and within the comms world, we also have to be careful of going off and creating comms, and particularly images. So there are issues around AI images particularly. So all of those pitfalls, absolutely. In terms of the cost of AI, some of the AI that we've embarked on using now. You receive co-pilot being reduced and rolled out, thanks, to members. That's within our SRS agreement and licensing. And there are other elements that we're paying for, and we're looking at our return on investment, because obviously some of those things may pay for themselves in terms of staff, time and resources. There are other major services that I won't name the projects, but that are very expensive, potentially hundreds of thousands of pounds. But in those cases, they would have to have a business case behind it. So we're doing a customer contact review that says we need this thing. We go out and then source that thing, and I won't bounce around kind of names. But where we can, we use open source technology, or we use technology within our agreements. So the website technology itself is open source. That doesn't mean the development is free, because you've still got resources to set it up and so on. But ultimately, it'll hold its own. And we try and use that AI within our SRS agreements and existing licenses as a start, and then we extend out if we need to. But it can be very expensive, but some of it's not.
Yeah.
And not all free stuff is a problem. Some of it's great. Open source, a lot of open source is great, provided it's authorised and we checked it out.
Thanks, great, thank you.
That check though, that human check is really important
Yes.
at the moment, because I think that's a message to all of us and to our residents in your ward, is that just because an AI has pulled it through, it can pull through from all of those sites, it can pull through from fake sites, it can pull through from big documents. So you do need to be really careful with the outcome that you get. It's helpful, but you do need that human being to kind of just double check some of the facts that come through.
I've gone over there, I got lots of questions. But it's a sneak one in. When you come up with the stats, the hits that you had, the site, how do you know that then? So I forget the figure, but you had a huge number of hits, million plus. Right? Are they individuals, or are they multiple use from individuals, or are they bots, AI searches? Is it possible to say, because how many residents we got in Newport? Is it over 1 million? So what's actually going on?
So there's two sides. There's the difference between the social media side that is talking about reach and engagement, and that is things like sharing, commenting on. It measures how long people stay on a post.
Yeah.
So it's not so much how many people, it's how many people have done different things with it.
Yes.
So it would kind of slightly different, and which is why we are very careful. And our lead in this, she's always looking every month. She's got on one of the notes for me. We need to be careful of this stat, because actually the algorithms are changing. It might not be a reliable stat for us. So, we try to only report back on things that we think are honestly reflecting the improvements that we've seen, rather than just, say, yeah, absolutely, we've had this percentage increase. It's trying to use a bit of professional knowledge and common sense around it, rather than just to make it a whack factor kind of thing. Website is a little bit different in that it will record. So I asked one of the team just before we came in to kind of just have a quick look at the analytics before we came in. And so, for instance, on the website, and this is only measuring the new pages, not the old pages, because the new analytic function is built in with that side of things. So in the year to date, we've had 1.7 million views, but of that, there were 373 active users. So you'll have so many users, and it does refresh in a way. It depends on how people clear their cache on their computers, etc. And we had 5.7 million event counts. So that means I'm actually doing something. So it might be going on to one of the forms or following a link to something. So there are lots of different metrics that you need to take and look at a bigger picture side of things. And that's an example of we've built a better analytic system into the new website. So come this time next year, we'll be even in a stronger position to do those comparisons, because we'll be comparing more of like for like rather than answers to the new system.
Okay.
We did, sorry, for the music trail as well, in particular, we did have views from outside of Newport, so there was some real buzz in Bristol and kind of Hereford and things like that. So we did have wider than just kind of Newportians looking at that.
Okay. I'm going to ask Councillor Bright if he's got any questions now, because he does have to leave a little bit early because he's in work at the moment. So okay, I'll give him an opportunity. Councillor Bright, and if you want to come in with anything now.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just trying to turn my camera on. Can you hear me? My camera won't turn on.
Yes, yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
It's working earlier. Try again, hold on. Well, first of all, thanks very much for that presentation. Yeah, it's interesting to know that, comms team is more than just Facebook and the website. There's other stuff going on in the background. I was oblivious to the fact that you're using digital radio to promote events. I mean, that's great stuff. Brilliant. And just going back to social media, I think before we met in the pre-meeting, we all commented that how we all noticed an improved correspondence from the council on Facebook and being more proactive and addressing concerns, which probably didn't happen 2 years ago. And the videos going out, it really is a good news story. And just pick up on one of them. I think the stuff last month about the rumours of Roman remains at 14 Locks, and the council perhaps post saying, I've got it here actually. You may have seen reports at the weekend about potential Roman bars being discovered at the pond at 14 Locks. We hate to disappoint the legions, they're very good there, who were excited by such a possibility, but sadly their claims are silly rather Sicilian. So it's really good. But then on the back of that, they then promoted the actual Roman remains in Clean, which, that's sort of a tongue-in-cheek maybe and less formal response on social media. It may not happen 2 years ago. So I think that's really good to put, if you like, a human face on the council. So yeah, it's more of a comment than a question, I think. Really good presentation. And yeah, just keep up the great work. Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree in that there's a time and a place for corporate and serious and professionalism there, but yeah, really dipping our toes into kind of being a bit more approachable, and most of us are actually residents of Newport, and these things matter to us. So
I was going to say, who sort of decides the approach? You come together as a team and.
I could say I can't take credit for the Roman one. That was Matt in the team, and he's very dry-witted. But yes, we do talk about it, and in a serious matter as well. There's always the conversation, and we all would have seen some of the horrible comments that are going on social media, kind of about different communities and stuff at the moment. We have somebody on social media duty every day, so they are looking and they are responding.
Is that 24 hours or?
It's not 24 hours, I'm afraid. Although if I'm honest, because we all use social media, we do pick up on things outside, but it's officially it's working hours. But we come together, we look at how we should respond, but also if we should respond, because sometimes it's better to sit back and let the platform self-regulate, and people will come on and say, don't be daft, what are you talking about, that's wrong, and allowing that sometimes to regulate itself is much more effective than us coming back too quickly and saying the council says. And we're also, and it's been really useful for us, particularly with the sensitivities at the moment, some of our networking groups from kind of across Gwent, but also with Welsh Government. I actually went to a local government association session on it last week about misinformation, disinformation, and how to best respond to it, what to say, when to say nothing. So, we've got some really good support around us from those bigger networks on how to manage some of those things that are becoming really quite challenging.
Can I come in on the disinformation bit there, because I think that's really important, because we've all seen it, disinformation, rubbish everywhere. The team are great at being really responsive when it's appropriate for us to be responsive, but we're battling it on all fronts, which is quite difficult. That Roman remains story being a great light-hearted example of sometimes where traditional media get it wrong for whatever reason, and we are battling disinformation on all fronts, and it is up to all of us as councillors, I think, to ensure that the correct information about our city is shared wherever we can, because that's what does our city the most benefit. And for all of us, it's easy to be political and all that sort of stuff, but I think us upholding that standard of sharing the correct information to our residents is so important. And as Kate said, this is a conversation we probably have every week about, well, every couple of days actually, about disinformation and wrong information being out there. So don't underestimate the battle and the work that's going into trying to ensure that those key messages, those key correct messages, are getting out.
Jake, I just coming up, which I think in terms of that question about who decides, I think you can see it from the outside, but I think the team have really gained in confidence in some of the change of tone, I'm going to call it that, because we had a particular model to follow, like lots of councils, very much the council's ways, and we've worked hard to develop different tones for different circumstances, and that takes time, doesn't it? But I think
well, it's good. I think it's the right balance.
Yeah,
especially someone mentioned in the last 12 months, 18 months. I've noticed a big difference in their approach, especially on platforms like Facebook, and it's a well-built approach. I think it's the right one.
Thanks. Any other questions from any of the councillors?
Just go.
Yeah.
Wow, well done on the presentation, Kate. Excellent. You mentioned that the team's a very small team, only I'm guessing 6 or 7. My question is there enough of you? Are you lacking resources? Do you need more people in the team? Is the budget big enough? Because we seem very busy, and it is a very important job.
We are busy. I think bottom line with it is you could make us 5 times bigger than we are, and we could still fill every hour, because there's always more that we can do. But the things that we are doing, that looking at the skills within the team and building that resilience, that the priorities are, and actually kind of beginning to focus more on the digital side of things and drawing away from other areas to increase capacity. I'd be lying if I said I didn't really love more people in the team. Of course I would, but you could keep doing that part of it centrally and with the cabinet members, making sure that we're prioritising and using those resources to the best capacity.
But if I come in there, it's really challenging because you don't want to make a bid for more resources, and we all understand the position the council's in, so we understand that, and that's fine. I guess that probably the resource concern is we've got a number of pieces with fixed resources with an end date. So that is a challenge there. And, you know, we've had a big step up with the website that's been funded largely by fixed term funds and reserves, but it doesn't matter how, fixed term funds. And we're now looking at, well, what does the future of that look like? What about when that runs out, which will be during next financial year? And then we need to start, you know, reworking what that looks like, making those cases. So I think that's fair to say.
Just going back to that first slide, and resources, not the first slide, how many people have you got in the team full-time per week?
That's right. Yeah, first slide.
No, I'll put it up if you know the number.
I know it's not. Yeah, so we've got 2, so myself, obviously, we've got 2 comms officers who are more to the traditional comms officer side of things. So they do media liaison, the proactive comms, they do all the cabinet member meetings, they support the cabinet function, and obviously things like, you know, writing press releases, Newport Matters, etc. So kind of, I would call them pure comms officers. They do social media and everything. We all do everything, but that's their specialism. We have 1 permanent resource for websites. We have 1 for marketing. And we have 3 and a bit, because we've got a couple of part-time members of staff that do design, filming, photography.
How many of those are fixed term resources?
That's the
That's the permanent.
That's
Okay.
Do you use agency much then? Or?
Not very much at all. It tends to be bigger projects, and I'm kind of like, I suppose I'm being a bit sweeping really, but if there's grant money around, so we had some kind of grant money, we don't have the capacity to support it in-house, and we try as very much as we possibly can to keep it in-house because it offers valuable money. But there are some instances where we don't have a specific skill set in-house, and it is more cost effective to buy in a temporary resource. But in the grand scheme of things, very little.
Yeah, and again, if I'll come in on that if I can, because I'm coming back to our recruitment and retention, you know, however many recruitments. And one of the models there around recruitment and retention is what I'm going to call entry point, where you might take people who aren't skilled and train them up. And we've had some success there with, you know, next apprentices, people who have some of the right skills but don't necessarily have all of the experience we need, but we can work with them on that. So our preference would be to go this more cost effective and obviously but we'll come back to some of those approaches when we do that recruitment piece. I'm really cautious of getting into structures and budgets too much because that's the edge of the scope of the committee, isn't it? But is it, in answer to your question, we know what that looks like longer term. Does that feel robust? That that does need further scrutiny. I mean, this one is scrutiny, I think.
Yeah.
The fixed term posts are 2 people for the web and the content delivery.
Oh, we're not getting into details.
So it would be important, I think, to understand what the council spends on its comms and how that reflects the sort of the general sort of public sector. So, you know, a dirty fag packet calculation on the numbers you give is about £500,000. I'm assuming some salaries and some onboards and stuff like that. So it's very dirty. But if you think it's roughly about £500,000 in those costs, you know, on a £330 million budget, the percentage of the sort of annual budget is, you know, that's quite low, isn't it? Where does that compare? And I don't expect you to know that, but
we have done that quite recently, actually. I can't remember what it's called, but I want to call it Comms Manager Survey, but it wasn't called that. That piece of work was done, but I haven't got that to hand. We could probably share that with you afterwards, unless you can remember off the top of your head.
Not off the top of my head. And the difficulty we have, we know we're certainly not big compared to other comparable authorities. The difficulty we have sometimes is doing direct comparisons. So, you know, we've brought the website side of things is within comms. You know, we've got a small marketing side of things, the design side of things. In other authorities, when you ask the question, quite often their web resources sit within their IT department. So if you ask the head of comms, how many is in everything? So sometimes it's quite, and not just us, but other authorities as well have actually gone down the FOI process, trying to kind of get structures and things like that. And there's so many variants in different areas. It's really hard to do it. But the heads of communication survey that's done, I think it's the RGA actually does it every year. You know, we're certainly not holding any facts, put it that way.
And I suspected that, and that was sort of part of the reason. The second sort of question I had then, you pulled up one of the earlier slides about sort of how you get requests from each service area. When I worked for the council, which is many moons ago, more than I care to remember, so you'd make a request to comms at the time, and there was no social media in those days, so it was often sort of design and graphics, and then those costs were being recharged back to the service area for that sort of design work and the time. Does that still happen, or have you got a central budget which is just comms, or do we know what each service area is using of your time? And you had some figures on sort of number of requests, but kind of the number of requests don't tell the whole story in terms of the time commitment. Do we know sort of, you know, and should we be thinking about kind of, you know, how departments draw on your resource and contribute to that?
start on that?
Yeah.
Because I think you're right, actually going back many years ago, it was more of a clear-cut SLA.
Yeah.
And they would chip in for the budget. Forgive me, I don't know what happened with that, but we got the corporate comms budget, which is primarily about people. It's people and us supporting it. There's a very small delivery budget that we can tap into. So most of what we do is our time and effort, and some small things like obviously licenses for different products, things like that. Generally, the model for bigger work that we do will be within a project budget. So if it's a regeneration project, there'll be an allocation within that for comms and marketing, and we'll make recommendations on how to spend that. So that's generally the methods. As for knowing what we do for whom, that's part of the reporting process that it's not perfect, but we're getting better at it. So we come at it from where do the rest requests come in. We also monitor how much design time we take on different jobs. So that could be filtered down in a category by service area or by team. When we look at our proactive output, so we measure and we record how many social media posts, etc. we put out, and we can filter those by service area. Likewise with our proactive press releases, they're all stored and logged under service area categories. So we're not perfect with it, but we're starting to get better at that bigger picture.
Yeah, and so you answered my next question. So the follow-up to that is effectively, your team needs, you sort of, one of your comments or lines in the presentation was about how comms is every department's responsibility. And you almost sort of play a business partnering function in lots of respects to each department to kind of go and support those departments to make sure that they're, getting their messages out and saying the things they need to say. Given the number of departments, and there's all those departments, but there's also probably lots of schoolwork as well that you probably do and bits and stuff like that that perhaps sort of don't necessarily fit so neatly as well. Seems a very small resource to business partner all those departments, when if you probably looked at the people department or the finance department and the way that they business partner, they would have much more resource to go into those departments and kind of unpick it. And part of the sort of the context of the question is part of the sort of things that have happened or come to the committee over the past sort of 2 years are been, we hear our sort of mid and end year performance reviews about lots of the good success stories that each department is doing things really well, but that never comes out in the media. We hear at the committee. I'm not sure how many people watch this committee or watch it back. I suspect it's not huge amount. So it's the resource and how we're telling those departmental stories, and that all feeds into the proactive comms rather than the reactive comms about the fact that we're the worst fly tipping city in Wales or whatever that was out there last week. And I've had sort of specific meetings with Sylvia around sort of some of the fly tipping stuff and things happening at Ward. We got some particular issues with that, and when she gave me some of that data, my response to her, I think I might have even said it before, is we haven't got a fly tipping problem, we've got a comms problem, and it's about how we get all that good positive information into the media to kind of and quash down, I don't know what the words I'm looking for is, to dispel all those negative sort of things that come out here. So that's the challenge, isn't it? Which I'm sure you're grappling with day to day.
And I would agree, and it is a challenge. And a lot of conversations we've had about how much time and energy do we give to the reactive side of things? Do we drown it out with the positive? And we've been trying to do, you can see that with the stats of how much we're getting out proactively. I would agree, and that's part of the process for service areas to engage with us. We've tried to strengthen that. nothing's ever perfect. We can always keep improving it. The fact that we try as much as we can to be present at those meetings and keep going. Don't forget about the comms. Don't forget about the comms. You know, we try and do that as much as we possibly can. We've had lots of support from the members. We do have support from the senior management team to keep, you know, and some very simple things like I think I was talking to you last week, putting comms as a standard agenda item on, you know, meeting agendas and things like that. So even if we can't be there, actually there's that prompt and this is how we need to feed it back in. So doing all of those different ways in and ways out, if you like, then to try and strengthen that. But it is challenging, and like I said, with that breakdown of service areas, you've got to take that with a bit of common sense with it. So if you take, you know, kind of public protection and environment, they are very public facing. There are lots of challenging and lots of things that people like to criticise or have take issue with. And we have only got so much capacity. We could have a dedicated resource to that. There's no doubt about it. I did have a quick look actually, because I suspect this might be one of the questions. So over the last 3 months of the way that we measure our proactive output, in August, 26% of our proactive stuff was related to that service area. July it was 32%, in June it was 26%. So that roughly they're getting just over a quarter of our effort, if you like. I won't say, because it's not always as simple as that, but they get a good proportion of it. But there's always more that could be done, but it would be at the expense of something else. So again, it's balancing those priorities, isn't it? And what's a hot topic at the moment? Because actually, what's the biggest priority for us this quarter might change completely next quarter.
Yeah,
being active and being responsive.
That's leads me into my next part, really. So, how do you prioritise? Because, as I understand it, you don't have a communication strategy. So, and that's out of this committee's remit anyway. But you've got sort of, you've alluded to a service plan that you kind of work to, but in services plan versus strategy, isn't it? And prioritising which bits. And if you're not led by a strategy from the cabinet, effectively, in terms of these are the key areas, like, you know, about 30% environmental and sort of protection, whatever I would say, which makes total sense to me because that's a key area for our residents. That's where we get a lot of feedback, criticism, etc. But the lack of a strategy, is the service plan effectively acting as a strategy?
To an extent, and we do, and I won't pretend it is somewhat outdated. So we do have an overarching common strategy which lays out our general approach and also expectations across the organisation. It's that delivery plan which is sometimes challenging, and it is reflected in the service plan. It's reflected in other people's service plans as well. So there'll be lots in if if we were doing a change in the rollout of the recycling side of things, there would be something within that service plan about the comms side of things. We are looking at them, we are reviewing them. There are some key things that we prioritise against. So the corporate plan, the digital strategy, those golden thread documents that across. So climate change, being a big one. So we do, and that, although it might not be as clear as they are on paper, that is why we sit on those boards. We sit on those boards and we sit on those project teams. So that helps us to prioritise because we are actually part of those key discussion groups. And obviously, from my point of view, then that comes back to the team. And we look at what we're working on, what we need to do first, what we need to give more time and effort to. It is challenging as an in-house public sector team. So it changes a lot. It really does change a lot. So even though we have that kind of broad overview through the service plans, we have to be adapting. We have to be flexible, I suppose that's the word I'm looking for in our approach. But yeah, we're looking at those because the documents that we've got still have merits. the same, but need to be updated. So one of them is areas we're developing the content strategy side of things, which needs to feed into that overarching. So yeah, again, room for improvement. Appreciate that.
So that goes back to the cabinet members' comments as well, council comments around that weekly meeting. So as well as the participants and being in those meetings, I think that weekly meeting and the monthly kind of catch-ups enables us to be able to look across kind of portfolios and look at where those priorities are. So I think there might not be a kind of written strategy as such, but we do get that direction from cabinet members and council leaders as well as to where those priorities are.
And I would say, just to add to that as well, it's a little bit about us being able to be fleet of foot, as Kate described, with social media trends and algorithms and how quickly, you know, things can change day to day on that. And it's a challenge, isn't it, Kate, for the team, you know, so we need to be fleet of foot as well. And, you know, some weeks we may have to be more reactive than we are proactive. It just depends what's going on. But in terms of the fly tipping point that you made, Councillor Howells, we issued, I just had a quick look, we issued a couple of fly tipping press releases with stats in August. And of course, what we also need to remember is that we don't have, once those press releases are released, we don't have control over which bits of those get used in the media, which is also a challenge for us, especially when we're trying to get those good news and good figures out, which is why it's great to see that Newport Matters is still where most people get their news and information from NCC, to, you know, that with the Facebook and being able to update that super regularly. But yeah, just wanted to add that.
No, that's really useful, and I think some of those press releases on the fly tipping came after my meeting with Sylvia, where I said we got a comms issue. So, and I was really pleased to see them because of all that sort of, you know, the disinformation points you were making earlier and how you deal with that. I think your point about agility is kind of really important, because it is, particularly in comms, sort of, you need to have that agility and be able to be sort of fleet of foot and react really quickly. But it's the resource plan versus strategy is really difficult. There's no strategy, and then, you know, comments from other committee members and me say, does there look like there's enough resource in the team? You know, my take would be that the strategy needs to understand what, and be clear about the kind of longer term vision rather than the agility and the which is really important, which will help, particularly because you've got some changes coming from the team and you're losing some sort of that temporary resource that you've had for the website. I think that strategy becomes even more important. What is it that the council wants to achieve through its comms function, both corporately and departmentally? And then, so, you know, I'd certainly encourage the committee to, you know, recommend to the cabinet member that you have a look at that in detail. That would be something that I would be sort of looking to recommend.
I think in terms of timing, Chair, that's not unhelpful. Because the massive focus up until now on we're still in the middle of a website project. I mean, it's not finished. That project still has a couple of months to run, and then we have to do a review of, is it still a project now, or is it business as usual? And also that content, digital content creation step and holding that position. So once all of that comes to a close, that will be a helpful time. That is a helpful time then, I think, about what is the business as usual plan for those pieces of work and how does that overlay. I just wanted to come back on the fly tipping point as an example. I think there is something as well around misinformation that this was addressed in council leaders' questions, wasn't it? There's a piece of work as well about making sure members have access to certain dashboards. That fly tipping was one example of those, and that, you know, I can think of others really, in order that you're part of that, aren't you? You're part of that, being able to make clear to communities what the issues are and whether those things are true or not. So that development, because comms sits in the middle of customer services, digital engagement, we talked about that. So that piece of work over there, I think, is complementary to some of that misinformation. It's quite a complex thing to do, but, you know, the test versions are being worked on.
Yeah. One final point, if I can. Sorry. So yeah, just asking myself. No, sorry, I just realised I've sort of hogged the questions. So One of the sort of social media, sort of the way the council brands itself on social media is a corporate sort of one voice, if you like, Newportsley Council. Lots of councillors, I know you and lots of other councillors have their own sort of Facebook pages and groups and everything else. And those, you know, particularly the way that sort of social media algorithms go now, those are probably where you get most of your reach now. So you talk about partnerships as part of the presentation and sort of the food festival partnering with, yeah, how do you sort of partner with councillors to make sure, and other sort of community groups that have got those captive audiences, to sort of get those messages out to the right people? I know we share, you know, whenever the council posts, we make sure we follow it, and it's talked about if we can then share things, but I'm not sure everybody does that, and I'm sure some do better than others. How do you kind of build on that? We've certainly had no kind of training or anything as councillors on how we might support the council with some of that.
I think that's a really good point, and it's something that we can look at. So we always call them the trusted voices, because we find within a lot of groups, and you'll know with the community groups, a lot of them, you've got to request access to it. You can't just go in and kind of post out and comment. And because those communities feel that they are safe spaces, they don't necessarily want the council in there. So that's challenge number one. And some of the things that we have been looking at is, and it is early days, and again, is allocating resources to it, isn't it? But, you know, for instance, with the hill redevelopment project side of things, we've been talking about how we can get messages to those trusted community voices so that they can, I'm not saying repeat verbatim what we want them to say, but actually that they can be a voice of clarity and a voice of sense within them. So we've started some of those conversations more around specific projects or specific areas of where we've got problems, you know, kind of with that, you know, incorrect information. But it's a really valid point, and it's certainly something that we're aware of. So yeah.
Yeah, I do, and I agree with councillor development on ensuring that we get the council's messages out and just pushing those messages as council without politicising them, as it were. And we have trialled, and I'm sure you've seen, Councillor Howells, we've done it, I think, twice, maybe 3 times this year so far, sending councillors packs out with graphics to share information on the National Residence Survey. I think we did one on the budget. So we are like working towards getting that information out to councillors to share. And it this was my plea for the record. It would be great if more councillors could do that, because I did have a little poke around and I'm not sure how many actually did share that information. So that would be really helpful. And yeah, some member development would be brilliant, I think, on how we do that. And this is something we can certainly pick up as a team at some point probably in the new year, given that we have food festival, Christmas, music trail launch. Remember, we have like 1 million events in the next sort of 12 weeks.
Yeah, they are sort of longer term actions, and I'm sure that'll be welcome. Did you want to come in?
I've got a little gripe on this, because I do get information sent to me, and one of them is we all get it, is the road works, the planning for the road works. And it's a long list that's alphabetical. And I have to go through it, and I have to find out where's Roman Road. Is anything happening there? And I have to go somewhere else. And I spoke to the department probably 3-4 years ago and said, wouldn't it be nice if it was organised by ward? And the gentleman said, that's really easy to do. And also, because it goes back to what I said earlier about there's a lot of information, there's too much information. People haven't got the bandwidth to go through and look at a long list and say, does that affect me? You know, so there's things that we could do, and that's just a little example of a very quick fix. Send the ward members information, if you can, on their ward. Other information is useful. You know, if it's the SDR that's shut, blah, 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 that affects everybody, or most people. But ward councillors are interested primarily in what's going on in their ward. So if we can just guide the information, that would be great.
I think Oh, go on, Kate. I think you're going to say what I was going to say, so you say it.
I was going to say thank you, because actually some of the examples that you're picking up on areas of improvement are in the pipeline. I get a bit sad to get excited about it. You're absolutely right. So that list is produced by the guys in infrastructure.
Yeah.
We don't get involved in that side of things at the moment. I didn't know how it went out to members, if I'm honest, but it goes on the website in the same
Exactly
way.
the same way,
It's the PDF. It's not great. It's not accessible. What we've done as part of the work on that area, and again, fingers crossed it's going to go live soon, is a live database of roadwork. So rather than that PDF, the people within that team will have access to our new system. We'll be able to put them in as soon as those jobs come in and they get approved and logged. The guys do that team. They will be able to input them. They will then be on the website, and they will be, you can filter by ward, by date, by type of road closure or one lane, that kind of thing, the type of work going on, and whether it's NCC works or whether it's Dual Cymru or anything like that. So that's in the pipeline. That will be going live soon, and that's something that we've done in collaboration with the team. It's something we picked up at that was not great, and we put some time and effort into it. So that it's those kind of things that we'd like to then, as the web, as an example, as the web development, prioritise, right, over the next 12 months, what of those issues. So feedback like that is great, because we can think about what we'd want to work on.
I just don't like nagging you every couple of years.
Sometimes it's helpful.
And also, as part of the web development project, we set up a structure. We call them the service area experts, because you are absolutely right in that we cannot know everything about every service area. I've been here a long time. I know quite a lot, but you can't know every time something is changing or a new service or just little tweaks. So we've set up, as part of the redevelopment, a group of these service area experts. So at least one representative from a team or a service area, in most of them multiple, because they're complex delivery areas, aren't they? Our intention, so they worked with us when reviewing and developing new content. And that's an example of, actually, this is not great now, what can we do to improve it? But we're going to keep that network of service area representatives going as part of web business as usual, so that we'll meet periodically. One of the issues, the feedback through customer services, so they're telling us hot topics, what are they getting phone calls about, etc. So we can say, actually, people are having problems with this area. What can we do from a comms point of view? What can we do from a web content point of view? Service area, is there something you could be doing differently? So again, like I say, there's always room for improvement with these things, and they will need to keep being improved and tweaked. But that's an example of one where there is something in the pipeline.
That's an example of a good answer.
Chair, do you mind if I just take us back a step to the trusted voices bit that we were talking about just now, and social media and getting stuff out there? Because of course Facebook and Instagram aren't the only social medias. You know, WhatsApp is an important mix in what we do, and I know Janice and her team do a load of work with community groups to ensure our messages are spread in community groups on WhatsApp, and which is really, really helpful as well, because again, that's trusted voices, and that's an important source of people to get their information. I don't know if you wanted to say anything else on that, Janice.
I think it's really important because we will always be the council. So for some of the community groups across people, we won't be somebody that they're particularly interested in engaging with, or so that having that list and having those contacts with our trusted community leaders, etc., has been really important. And I think just giving the National Resident Survey is one of those examples. So as well as having a pack for people that we've shared kind of with elected members, we've also done it with our key community leaders, and often language barriers, cultural barriers. The only way we'll overcome those and support people to be able to kind of tell us what they think is through those community leaders. And a big press release or whatever it might be doesn't work. It is that little WhatsApp message between the group themselves. Everybody who knows each other or knows of each other is the best way to spread that message.
That's been quite a good legacy from COVID, actually, hasn't it? Because we needed to do that at that point, and it's a bit relationships.
Okay, any other questions from any of the committee? No? Okay, just wrap up some recommendations, things going forward.
General comment show that case the right is the improvement of responsive Facebook address concerns police council's responses that the heads of conservation committee.
Do people want to see that sort of survey?
It's in the public domain.
Yeah, we can share it. I think for me, the recommendation alongside that is for the cabinet to understand the resource they're putting into comms in comparison with the sort of national average or the benchmark of authorities outside or whatever the wording looks like, and then consider whether our budget for comms is sufficient. It's like that. Send them out and put some nice words. I'll ask my big co-pilot.
Just check it.
That's probably what
Yeah,
I think we're
I
going
agree.
on.
Absolutely more about that. And then there was something about I'm going to call it right words, either making best use of councillors, rolling out communications and considering the walk out, something like that. I think was good.
Yeah, with some potential sort of training for members that might need it. Sharing networks.
Any other comments or recommendations the committee would like to make in relation to the report?
The only other one for me was then for the cabinet member to consider the comms strategy for business as usual as the team approaches losing some of its fixed term resource around the website development. Yeah. Is there anything else? No.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the committee. It's quite tricky to prepare for because the questions. It's really helpful discussion.
Yeah, it's good. Could we get a copy of the presentation?
Yeah.
It was useful. There was probably more detail in the presentation in the report in terms of some of the data and stuff. So.
Thanks.
Super duper. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Thanks for your time.
Thanks all. Bye.
We just need to wrap up US recommendations before you run off.
Well, they're doing anticipations of Sunday.
Those dolls, good job they're not real people, isn't it? No worries, thanks for your time, appreciate it. Very quickly then, we're on to Scrutiny Advisor report, I think, are we?
Yeah. So just to advise the committee that sent out majority of the action spent comes from the end of year reviews, still chasing out some outstanding ones, sending them to us in this areas to get them. Our next committee meeting would be on the 3rd of November. That will be the customer contact improvement project, which is due to come today, but it's been moved to November now, so I'll discuss.
When's the next week? November.
3rd of November.
3rd of November.
That's the Monday.
Actually, yes, Chair.
Yeah. Okay, minutes of the previous meeting. Really?
We should have the two lots from the two end of year reviews, Chair.
I did read them online. I didn't have any comments. I was happy with them. Everybody else happy to approve them? Yeah. Okay. And then that's it. No other business? No? Everybody happy?
Yeah.
Ecstatic.